Everyone, and welcome to the Evolve with Emily Show YouTube channel. The best way to support the show on this YouTube channel is to subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave a comment, and or share it with a friend. I hope that you guys enjoy this episode, and whichever way you choose to support the show, I just wanted to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you guys so much. I hope that today's message and episode brings some bit of positive change to your life. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Evolve with Emily show. I'm your host, Emily Hayden, and today we have multi-talented and multifaceted leader, former Miss California and Mrs. Nevada, actress, model, photographer, producer, and entrepreneur. We have a businesswoman with multiple successful businesses. She's the CEO and founder of Elite Expo Talent Agency, creator of Menda Nation, just to name a few. She is someone who executes with excellence, tenacity, grit, and passion. Her mission is to serve God with every gift, talent, and opportunity that He has given to her. As someone who loves God, loves people, and loves this country, she has decided to break the bystander effect and create some real change in this nation by stepping up into the race for U.S. Senate. Everybody, please welcome Sharelle Mendenhall to the show. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Emily. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I really appreciate your time today. So I want to dive right in. You have a personal motto. If you go with me, God, I'll go. What does that mean to you, and how have you followed this in your life?
That's a really great question. So I'm going to give a little bit of backstory to then bring it up to date. But I was born with my twin, my identical twin inside of me. And so at 5 weeks old, they ended up at the City of Hope, saving my life by cutting out the mass that had formed my twin, half of my liver, one of my adrenal glands, several things that it was attached to. And while I was, in surgery, my aunt was actually praying over my life. My mom was praying over my life. My dad was praying over my life because they didn't know if I was going to make it or not. And my aunt had told me years later, she's like, as I was praying over your life, I got my own prayer language as I was praying over your life. And so just growing up, my mom always told me, she's like, God spared your life for a reason. So I've known that I was little. And so I would go around and be like, okay, God, like, what do you want me to do in life? What do you want me to do? And I accepted Jesus when I was 4 years old. So I had this relationship with the Father from there. And then fast forward to, throughout life, I would involve God in almost every single decision in business, in life. Didn't mean I didn't make mistakes, but it just that I would involve Him and I'd be like, okay, like, where do you want me to focus? Where do you want me to go? And then fast forward to this, I literally had told God that when someone brought up if I should run for U.S. Senate, I said no at first. And the next person said, hey, Sharelle, you need to run for U.S. Senate. And I said, let me pray about it. And I go to church. And at church, I literally go to the front of stage and I said, I'm not going unless you go with me, God. I'm not going unless you go with me. And I said a couple of other things, just about my verse for the week. And my verse for the week was, ask anything according to my will, and it will be given to you. And I said, God, I need more of you. The world doesn't need Sharelle. They need you. And that conversation at the front of church, I go sit down and, making the story short, I ended up having a pastor from stage say, is Sharelle still in the room? And
oh my gosh.
calls me to the front of stage. And again, no one knows except for my husband and that I was praying over this and the person that had suggested it. And he's like, Sharelle, you know what you've been called to.
Wow.
It's going to be tough, but you're going to invade it. And it's not warfare as usual. You prophesy and wage good warfare. Puts a key in my hand, a physical key. And so I walked out of church after, several other just encounters of just confirmation. And I walked out, I said, okay, God, I was like, this is big, but I trust you. And I know that your heart for the U.S. is his heart is breaking. It's going on right now, and we need to partner with Him in the process of getting us back on track, because we were founded as one nation under God. We don't get to say that and not partner with Him in life. So it is definitely something for me that is a life model in everything that I'm doing, because it is his heart and his plans and his nation. And I want to make sure that people understand that.
Wow, that is so beautiful. And thank you for including that backstory, because I think it really shows how from the get-go, you've known that you have such a deep purpose and you have something so important to be part of that your life was literally spared for it. And I think a lot of people have to go throughout their journey to finally figure that out, figure out that they do have a purpose and that they do have a part to play in this. So I think that's really special. And I think you leading with that partnership with God is going to be such a difference. You mentioned something, you said that when you're making decisions, you included God in that. How do you realistically do that? I talk a lot about faith on here, have a lot of people that come to me for different advice, but how do you in your own walk realistically include God in your decisions? Is it a quick like, hey God, is this cool? Or how is that process for you?
That's a great question. I have a couple of different things that I do, just depending on the decisions that I'm. There are so many times that you actually go through your day and you don't have a lot of time to just like sit and meditate and pray. So that's something that needs to be built up. So, kind of like Jesus' example, because so many times when the disciples came to him and they're like, hey, we couldn't throw this, cast this demon out of, this specific person when they had been doing it all along. And he said, this one comes out by prayer and fasting. So thing that he had built up. So that's one level. So you build that up by prayer, by fasting, by spending time in the word, getting to know him. Because when you know someone, when you know them so well, when a decision pops up, you know that they're behind, they're with it. When you know their heart, it's just like a regular relationship. You can actually order for them or know what they would say in that situation. So that's the same thing. So you're building up almost your reservoir of knowing who he is by getting in the word, worshiping, like, knowing that your day is worshiping him and all that you do and touch and those declarations. And then sometimes, I just, if it's a really big decision and it popped up right then, I'll just turn inward. I was like, okay, God, what are you speaking over this? And one of the biggest things is his presence is peace. So when there's on a decision, if I feel peace on it, then I'm like, okay, God, let's go, and he that direction. And if I feel unsettled, I'll wait. I'm like, okay, like let's dig in. What would you like me to do instead? And sometimes it's just not now. It may not be a no, but it's a not now.
Wow.
Both kind of practical ways.
Yeah, no, that's so helpful. And I love giving the listeners practical things they can think about or ask themselves or do. So I think that's perfect. Okay, so I want to go into a little bit of your personal journey of evolving, right? You have held many different titles and roles throughout society, whether it's actress or model or business owner, and now future U.S. Senate. What has been the process of this evolution for you? And how have you navigated knowing when it was the right time for you to go into the next season of your life?
Again, another great question. So for me, the biggest things is I like to spend time with myself and with God process. And I actually have as I have you fall. So this is my, I bring my journal with me everywhere. And not just that, when I have so many that I've filled up, and that is a process that is both for myself, and kind of writing everything down, even the things that I'm struggling with, the things that are going on in my head, what's going on in my heart, and taking those pieces, writing it down and having that candid conversation with God, in addition to my devotions. So how that sets me up to evolve is I feel a prompting or an opportunity come up, and then I'm like, okay, God, is this what you would like me to walk in? And sometimes it's just like that response of seeing a need, seeing that people need to him. And I love just the vision that sometimes we need to just respond and be his hands and feet and not just sit on the sidelines and pray. Because that's one thing that disappoints me just kind of in the Christian world. It's like, okay, great, I'm going to pray for you. It's like, okay, well, what do you have in your hand? Like, God asks that. What do you have in your hand? And so a lot of times when I see a need or I see an issue, it's like, okay, what do I have in my hand? I can do this. Even if I don't know absolutely everything that goes along with specifically when, I took a team down to help rebuild in Houston. We thought we thought we were just bringing down donations to help the victims, in Houston. And then we ended up doing some demolishing up to FEMA standards because they were living in their rotting houses. Wow. And they didn't have cars to be able to go and get any supplies. So we actually had to go to them. So I think one of the biggest things for me is the question is like, what do I have in my hand when there's a situation in front of me that I can help? Challenges, as far as when you're talking about it evolving, a lot of times I love the idea of being comfortable with being uncomfortable outside of that boat and constantly having to rely on God to keep you up. And there are times where, especially as a business owner, you're paying yourself nothing. You have people who and you're working more hours and making less money than if you were just to go work for someone else. But in those challenges, like he always meets you there and, builds strengths because you learn from your failures. You learn, your successes as well. And you meet incredible people along the way. And then they can encourage you and partner with you as you continue to grow and take the next step. And again, practical ways is looking at someone who is a good friend or a mentor, and they can encourage you who are wanting to bounce something back. Okay, is this the right time for me to step into this? Someone who is a good friend and a good mentor can help you and guide you. So that way it's like, okay, let's pray about this together. And there's power.
Absolutely. And I have definitely utilized that in my life. Even just friends who I know have walked through maybe different or deeper waters than I have before, calling them and say, hey, this is what I'm walking through right now. This is what I'm praying about. And I did it just the other day. And my friend was like, I was asking about a certain season. And she was like, have you asked God how long the season's going to be, how long you need to be doing this thing? Or are you just going off of what Emily thinks, right? And so just having that person, like you're saying, to really bounce those ideas off of, and people who are on that same journey of you, of growing, of evolving, of walking in the things that God has them in, I think really is so helpful to your own individual journey and your own purpose, because I really believe that we are not meant to be isolated individuals. We are meant for community. So how has community in your life helped to shape where you're at today?
Community is vital for absolutely everything. And, it's people who are wise, but also grounded in Jesus. So I love having, different people to reach out to, because sometimes you have, given the pandemic, I needed to reach out to virologists and immunologists and talk to experts in that area to understand how I can best partner and look towards the future. Same thing with your friends. So it's people who are business owners who can actually people you go to for advice. Okay, I'm facing this. How can I get around this? How can I bolster this? How do I grow? Someone who's an expert in marketing, and really surrounding yourself with those types of people help you on your journey in order to make sure that you're not just kind of spinning your wheels. We have one life. We have, and to spend it, whether it's stubborn or just wanting to say that you did it on your own, that's not what community actually causes you to go farther when you go together. So it's also amazing to look around and celebrate with people on that journey, because sometimes it's just a milestone you hit, and if you're alone, no one to turn around and celebrate with. But then, you're at that milestone, you can look and you can call your friends, you can call your mentors, thank you for pouring into me. Because of you, I'm at this place in life.
That's beautiful. So, and it's so powerful too, because I think we have this world and society that is encouraging self-sufficiency, and they're almost idolizing it as if I did this all on my own with nobody else and no one's help. But it's like, what does it matter if you get to your goal, you get to that vision, and you have nobody to share it with? part of the beauty of life is getting to share these beautiful moments with these flourishing relationships that you've cultivated, so I think it's important not to ever get so tunnel vision and so focused on this thing that you want to achieve, or this title, or this goal that you have for yourself, that you allow these other things to die in your life, flourishing relationships and family and friends. And, also I believe that we are called to each other, right? We're called to empower and to equip, and, iron sharpens iron kind of idea, right? You're called to be that for each other. And how can you do that if you were staying isolated? How do you think social media has impacted this very topic? Because I kind of feel like social media sometimes presents the feeling that you're in community, but really people are just alone in their bedrooms scrolling and commenting on their phones.
Absolutely. And I think that that's two layers, because there is good that comes from it, but it also is isolating. And I think that we need to know about getting together, getting in person, just like there was the benefit for us to be able to do Zoom when they weren't sure just about churches and opening up. You had those questions. That is a benefit, but I do believe you need to step inside of that church. You need to be a part of community. You need people in person. It is a psychological piece to be able to be around community, and how we need that in our lives. Physical touch, it's that smile, it's that power, it's that encouragement. So I think that, again, there is an amazing way to connect with people you've never been able to connect with. So that is a great tool. But you also still have to be about getting together in person and, loving on one another. It's like a idea, but it is so real and so needed.
Can you tell me about Mend a Nation?
So Mend a Nation was born on a walk. So every single year I spend just really praying about what God wants for that year. And this was, the 2021. And, we had gone through the pandemic, and Elite, which is one of my companies, had shut down, obviously, because of events. And so I'm spending this time with God up in Tahoe. I'm like, okay, I'm getting restless. What do I do? What do I pour my time into? What do I pour my energy into? We've had the world, shut down, and, he knows my heart and how I have always loved to give back. And so anytime that I had an opportunity, I would go and serve, whether it's building houses, volunteering. I love it, but I have always felt like it wasn't enough. I was like, okay, God, what do I do? And so just kind of having that, process and open conversation with him. And while I was listening to some worship music on a walk, word Mend a Nation was dropped in my spirit. So I turned around afterwards. I was on my walk with my dog. I went back to the resort, and I started writing out a business plan, which is a buy one, donate one company.
Oh, cool.
And so it was specifically for charity. So it's not just one charity, but multiple different charities, because, as I looked at other business models, you saw that it was kind of one sphere or one silo that they were pouring into. And I was like, God, I want to do more. And so finding and vetting different charities that I have worked with to make sure that they were at a level of, 80 to 90% of the dollar was going to the charity and the actual mission versus their pockets. Again, when you talk about involving God in every single kind of step, I was praying about what the mission statement should be. And our mission statement is everyone loves a good hoodie. So we created a hoodie that does good.
Oh, I love that. Oh my gosh. That's great.
Yeah. And so it has, we're partnering with foster care. We have human trafficking. That's so, just as this is moving along and developing, I can't wait for everything to just be out there for the world. It's been a process because of supply chain and the world has shut down, but I love it. I love the heart behind it. And I'm and I can't wait to just reach everybody that I possibly can with it.
I think that's such an incredible idea. And I love that you made it an open platform where you could support multiple different, categories, right? Rather than just being so limited to one. So you mentioned human trafficking, and I know that that is a topic that is really something that you're very passionate about. So in something that you give back to for fighting the efforts and the fight against human and sex trafficking. So can I kind of hear a little bit about your heart behind that? Why is that something that is a passion of yours? Why do you feel so strongly that this is something that we need to focus on and fight?
You know how things kind of come into your life for a long time and for a reason. And I had people coming on asking me to do films about human trafficking. And I got sent some really disturbing information about human trafficking. And one of it was actually in the Body Village, BADHI. And they were selling babies as young as 2 years old.
Oh my gosh.
In these stories, and the amount of anger that people could sell babies and that people were buying these babies. And I knew it existed and I always hated it. But you read those stories and see people actually in houses and trying to get these, kids out of these situations. And I was like, partner with this. And this was, quite a while ago. And then I had other people who I met. They're like, hey, will you be in my fashion show? It's actually helping, end human trafficking. And they'll tell their stories. I was backstage, about to walk on, and they're talking about their own personal stories of being trafficked.
Wow.
And losing it. I'm
wow.
it behind stage. Fast forward to February of 4 years ago. My sister, we don't know where she was. We found her purse a block from where she was last seen, and we still haven't found her. We don't know anything. And I don't know specifically that it's human trafficking, but we do know that she has disappeared. And that feeling that people have to go through when you have a family member missing, it definitely did and took a toll on my entire family. And so for me, it's kind of like that starfish story. We have a lot of things that we need to do in order to tackle human trafficking. There's a lot of different avenues that we need to approach in order to make a huge impact. Because every 30 seconds, a child goes missing. That's how grave of a situation we're in. And so for me, I don't want anyone to go through. So it's even if I'm impacting one family at a time by closing the borders, by making police task force have all the necessary tools in order to go after and attack these rings, to get these women out, to get these kids out. So each angle that we're going to take, we're going to be fighting this from several different areas. So not just one. It's empowering, it's educating, and sure this is at the forefront of people's minds, not for fear, but to fight it. It's by shining the spotlight on it that we do have a massive issue and we need to address it now. We can't wait, and we can't keep standing on the sidelines and saying that it's okay that every 30 seconds a child goes missing.
I cannot even imagine going through that as a family. I have 4 other sisters, and I just can't imagine what you and your family have gone through. So I really am sorry for that. And I will keep you guys in my prayers 100%. For people who hear about this and, they're aware to it, they've been educated now, but now they actually want to take action. They're like, how do I get in the fight? Do you have any advice for people who want to help and just don't know where to start?
One of the biggest things is partnering with charities that actually are boots on the ground. Something I would encourage people to go to is Worth Fighting For. They have a global and they have a local, in Las Vegas. So they have several different ways that they're helping. And Las Vegas, Nevada has the highest per capita as far as trafficking. And so you can get involved through Worth Fighting For, and it's global or Las Vegas. That's one piece, but they also have other outreaches and partnerships in order to make sure that you guys are helping and making a difference.
Okay, thank you. And you mentioned the border briefly. How do you believe the border plays a role in human sex trafficking, and what do you believe is the solution?
That's very layered. So one piece is they actually use humans for drug trafficking. And so they will again, kidnap these kids, use them for drug trafficking, and getting their drugs across the border. There is such a massive draw for drugs here in the States. We're seizing more fentanyl than we ever have. We're having more deaths than we've ever had with fentanyl. So they're utilizing these kids as drug mules. Mm-hmm. They're with a lax border, they're able to take these kids back and forth for sex trafficking. So by closing it, it is going to narrow down their ability in order to get across, in order to use them as drug mules. And we can actually focus in, those places where we're pouring in. We can actually have solutions, and say, oh, well, this is the numbers. This is where we're at. It's, the worst in 40 years. But the border, making sure that we're strict on that process, and immigration ensures that we're doing all that we can at that place, and not just for chance, but these need to be stopped. And so that way we can zero in, like I said, on anyone who's coming across who does have this suspicious history, and we can ensure that we move that number down.
Yeah. So. And I think it's really important that people take the time and educate themselves a little bit more about what's happening at the border so they can understand the bigger picture. Because I really do believe that in every one of these aspects, education really is key, because when you are able to see the increase in human trafficking, the increase in drugs, the increase in crime and murder, you're able to really see where it's coming from and really attack the problem head on, and hopefully proactively before it ever even enters the country. Okay, I want to switch gears a little bit. So defunding the police has been such a massive movement here in the US, and I believe it's been very politicized, and I believe that there's even been places that have gone through with it and gone back on it. Where do you stand when it comes to defunding the police?
I think that defunding the police is an absolutely ridiculous notion. Our police are serving our communities. They're serving our people. They take care of us. Are there some, bad apples, so to speak? Yes. But, that's what the media and politics have been publicizing, is these apples, when in reality, they have been serving us for such a long time. And we need to make sure that this defund the police is completely taken off the table. We need I think that it's not just taking it off the table. I think that we need to take the next step, and we need to start empowering other programs to ensure that kids actually want to grow up and be like it. Because that's, I think, a byproduct of what Defund the Police has done, is actually cause people to not want to grow up and be. And it's been such a noble and incredible honor to serve. And so I think we actually need to flip the script, and we actually need to start putting programs in place for kids to start looking up to police as heroes again, not as the popo, not as cops, not as someone to be afraid of, but as individuals stand for the right thing in our community, for our families, and ensure law and order, which is necessary. Because obviously, as you have seen, they actually likened the crime in Los Angeles to the Purge.
Wow. That's what I've been seeing. So I don't know if you know, I lived there for the last 7 years, and I recently moved within the last year. And I know multiple friends and friends of friends that have been attacked, that have been beaten, that have been stolen from. And I'm hearing all of the backstories that aren't really being published on the news of what's actually going on day to day. There are entire groups of people that are targeting places in Beverly Hills and in Hollywood and showing up and, robbing these people at gunpoint, in some cases killing them. So I'm not surprised to hear that it's been likened to the Purge, because it really is mayhem out there.
It is.
Yeah. And so, so you did mention there are some bad apples, right? Just like anything, I believe that there's always going to be good and bad, right? So what can we do with more police funding in terms of maybe weeding out those bad apples, or doing a better job to make sure that we lessen those instances?
I think that there's a couple of different layers to that. So, when it comes to training, when it comes to statistics, a lot of people are kind of looking at it from a very high level view versus the ground level, when, hey, they're trying to get home to their families as well. And so by, just categorizing everyone who has had, altercation or had an incident where they've had to use their weapon, it's not necessarily what the media is spinning it as. And I think that, it's a process of making sure, you mentioned it earlier, but it's educating. So it's educating them on, statistics. What are the issues in that specific area they can be aware of, because they do need to go home to their families as well, but not taking it to an extreme to where, so many people have, and I have heard, really tragic stories of profiling, feeling like they are going to be profiled and that they need to make sure that they present themselves as someone who isn't going to be one of those statistics. It is an education piece. I think it's a partnership as well. It's a collaboration, making sure that we don't, just kind of stand on both sides of the aisle. It's coming together. It's okay, how do we fix that? Like we need kind of a town hall. We need an open forum of saying, okay, this is what's happening in my community. This is what's happening in this area. And we need to be aware of it. We need to educate one another to protect us, but we also need to protect the community. So how do we best do that? And it's bringing all sides to the table versus a singular approach.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that collaborative effort is what's going to bring all perspectives, all experiences to the table in order to find a real solution. So I'm in full agreement with you there. I have family and friends in law enforcement, and their entire purpose and reasoning was because they love their community so much. They wanted to help bring that law and order. So I do believe that at its root, it is something that is so necessary, so good, and something that should be protected, cultivated, and absolutely, like, it needs some reforming. So I agree with, what you said there. And I think it's important to also, recognize the fact that when we have law and order, we don't have things happening like what we're seeing in Chicago, like what we're seeing in LA, right? So looking at the opposite of law and order is seeing these cities and these parts of the country that are in lawlessness, that can get away with doing absolutely anything, and look at, okay, what does that produce? And is that a society that we want to live in? I don't think there's anyone that would say that they would want to live in a society that mimics the purge.
No, absolutely. And then when I looked up the numbers to compare Los Angeles to Vegas, we were 11 points higher.
Oh, so my goodness.
Yes. So it's bad. And I think that we need to get back to making sure that we are enforcing the law. I think so many people right now, and even law enforcement, are scared because of the way that they're publicizing. They're putting them on this platform where they don't need to be on this platform. We need to ensure that we're being tough on crime. It is no longer to allow what's happening. The trains, those are going viral so people can actually see that specific issue. But in Los Angeles, seeing these trains just being robbed, you see people making memes about what's going on in the Bay Area, and that, aren't even paying for things. They just take a mob, go in there, back hundreds of thousands of dollars, and people are afraid. And we have polarized. We've started this ball rolling, and it's gotten out of control. And so the afraid to do their job because someone's going to go and then put it out of context. And that's right. And you mentioned it earlier. They're there to serve, and they love their community and ensure that their families, their friends, and the people that they love were protected. And we do ensure that that is happening again, because that's not what's going on right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what do you think in terms of this administration? How do you think this administration is going? And if being a U.S. Senator, what will you do in terms of this administration and just everything that's going on?
I wanted to speak directly to a couple of different pieces, because in reality, I never thought that I was going to be delving into politics. I'm a business owner. I love business. I love family. I love my life. But, as a person who was sitting in the church pews for a long time, I remember growing up hearing everyone complain about politicians and how corrupt and how they hated them. But no one from the church was stepping up. So that confuses me. If you don't like something, why are we still sitting on the sidelines? Why are we not being part of the solution? So I'm going to address something that's really direct, and it's kind of on everyone's mind right now. And I'm sharing it with you before I'm sharing it with everyone else.
Awesome. Thank you.
But one thing that like it is necessary, is kind of this idea that we don't have integrity in voting. We're in a democracy, and we need to make sure that that is protected at all costs. So a voter ID needs to be mandatory. And if you listen to Chuck Schumer and some of the administration, they have specifically said that it is racist to require an ID. And I think that that statement is appalling, because it says that anyone who isn't white is going to have a hard time getting an ID. And that is offensive. That is appalling. And I want to put together, because for me, it's an excuse. So I sat down, I took a look at all the numbers. I'm a numbers person. I'm a solutions person. I like plans. And so I broke it down. So according to the ACLU, it's about 21 million Americans that don't have an ID. And I'm talking about American citizens. So, everyone parse words right now, as you've seen in New York, what's happening. 21 American citizens that don't have one, and it could cost $75 to $175 for each of them to get an ID when you include a birth certificate or anything along those lines. So what we do is we actually give $175 stipend, which is on the highest end, to absolutely every individual who does not have an ID. To support that money goes directly to our state and local government. It is not going back out into the world. They're not buying TVs. It's not going where it doesn't need to go. So we're taking this, we're ensuring that our democracy and the fabric of our country is intact. And by simply giving them $175, by then, if they don't have one, they don't want one. So you can't use the excuse that it is racist, because that's what they keep using. And not only do I think it's appalling, but it's just an excuse, because there is a simple fix. And they were sending out a bunch of, free handouts that you could use on whatever you want, instead of taking $175, which is specifically directed towards ensuring that they get an ID, they get a birth certificate. This also bolsters, jobs. So you can't get a job, pay your taxes without having an ID. So this also bolsters our economy. So it's a win-win. That's one piece that I think that people need to realize. We don't have to do processes as usual. When it politics, we don't need to sit there and just take the excuse and let it spin in circles. We have the filibuster going right now, but it is absolutely simple solutions to make sure move forward, because we're at a stalemate, and it's just causing us to fight and be more divisive. So that's one piece. Next is banning mandates. So the administration specifically has put unconstitutional mandates in place, where you actually get the opportunity to choose whatever you want to do with your life, good or bad. There are consequences if you do something bad, but you have that opportunity. You literally can do drugs if you would like. You can harm if you would like. But that's where freedom allows people to choose every single day. Even the Bible, even God gave everyone to choose. And so these mandates need to be blocked. They need to be stopped. We need to ensure that people have informed consent. And that is what we should always have had it as, informed consent. Here are the real numbers. Here are the risks. This is the possibility. We have not had a long time to study what this can do, what it can cause. So I need to know specifically that this specific mandate, sorry, my husband, this specific is unconstitutional, and we need to ensure that we're protecting these freedoms and these rights going forward, because as you can see, it was an emergency order that they stepped out of line and have then extended it, and it's caused people to lose their jobs, their livelihoods. We see suicide rates have skyrocketed because they're losing hope. The breakdown of our economy, you can actually see that happening at our borders. Our gas prices have skyrocketed. Inflation, there's just so many impacts to it. But it was because, we took something and spread lies, spread fear, saying, here are the facts, here are the numbers. And as a people, I trust you to make that choice. And to kind of bolster that in one piece, we actually see the Prime Minister of England saying exactly that I trust my people to make their own choices. I'm taking away anything that's compulsory. And I think that we actually should be the ones leading the way in freedom, because we're known for it and we're not. So that's kind of my entire take on the administration, is we're not being aggressive. We've failed our military. We've failed in Afghanistan. We're failing them by mandating, and we're losing again a whole other force that again has served our country because they loved our country. Going back to the police, they love their community, they love their country, and now there are so many that don't want to serve because they don't want to be mandated, to take. Hasn't been tested throughout time.
Absolutely. That is in fact having so many adverse reactions and in some cases death. And I also look at, why are these things being silenced? Why are we not being upfront and truthful about the things that could occur as a result of these mandates? And I also want to know, why do you feel it is important to protect freedom? Why do you feel it's important to protect medical freedom in this case?
It is the very foundation of why we're here, why we live in America. There are so many people who come to our country for that. They have the opportunity to choose, to have those freedoms, to grow a business, to have a family, to worship God, to do every single thing that freedom enables us to do, and be protected at all costs. At all costs. This is something that we have stood by and kind of let this small percentage erode the moral fabric of our country and what we stand for, and swayed it and made it so that if you actually stood up for those things, that you were in fact racist or were against something that was new, when in reality it's like, no, this is what I'm going to stand for. And that kind of goes into something that I think is kind of ties together, is what's happening with the transgenders that are going into women's sports. And so, you have this massive push in order to allow and be inclusive and equity and equality. And this is not okay. There is absolutely no way. If I'm the best swimmer, I'm going to use this this scenario because of what's happening really boldly. Is this individual is stating that it is easy to keep winning all of these races because this person is biologically a man. So there is no way, as even the best woman swimmer, I'm actually going to have an opportunity if they continue to allow biological males to go into those sports. I am adamantly against this. I think that for them to come in, it is stripping away every woman who is an Olympic hopeful. They're not even going to try anymore. And that's not okay. As a woman, I want women, and I want strong women to stand up and be heard, to be seen, to be acknowledged for the time, the energy, the effort, the discipline they put in order to be at that elevated place. So this stripped away simply because someone decided that they would like to be a woman and they want to be the best and get an Olympic medal. If in fact that's what you want as a biological male, you need to compete with biological men.
Absolutely. And I think what I'm seeing often is sometimes I think that these movements are essentially wearing a mask, right? They're wearing this mask of equality. They're wearing this mask of inclusivity. And yet they're actually attacking an entire group of people. They're attacking women's rights. They're attacking women's ability to be the best at what they're doing. So they're wearing this mask of inclusivity, but and yet they're attacking that exact individual group. So I think it is incredibly wrong. I think we have to have change. And I think there is a way to be inclusive and allow people the freedom to express themselves as they would like to or please to. But I think we have to do it in a way that protects the ordinances that we already have going on. Do you feel like there is another solution for this exact scenario? Do you feel like there's a solution here for transgender and this entire movement and athletics?
Absolutely. Especially when it comes to, the Olympics, in reality, you can have an open category. So from any gender, if you're male, female, transgender, you can enter it. So it's an open category. Obviously, I thought about this in depth because that's the opportunity. And if a woman wants to actually compete against a man, to prove that they are in fact the best, or if a transgender, that literally opens it up, because in reality, we do live in America. You have the freedom to do what you want with your body. And with that, it needs to be a whole completely separate category. But it is not, and it does not have a place in a woman's category.
Amen. And I love hearing strong, empowered women stand up for other women, because I think sometimes people are timid and they're shy and they worry about what other people are going to think when they express their strong opinion in this way. But I think we have to stand strong, and we have to stand together, and we have to fight for women and for our freedom and for our rights, because if we don't, they will be taken away right in front of us.
Absolutely. And something you said earlier is just kind of the ordinances that are already in place. And there was actually a letter that went out, and I won't disclose where or what, but, it was to a school district and to the teachers, specifically saying that you can't say mom, you can't say dad, you can't say wife. You literally have to call them parent one, parent two. And this was a pilot. And you can't say she, you can't say him, like you have to say they. And, it was a pilot, and it was earlier on this past year. And that's another thing that we need to do as far as a solution. Again, you have the right to be called whatever you want, but that does not mean you get to take away my right to be a she, to be a mom, to be a wife, to be a her, for, my husband to be a dad, to be a father. I love those titles, and you don't get to stray away from me just because you want everyone to feel, and it's not everyone, it's a small percentage of people, just as far as numbers are concerned. Can they ask anyone to address them in a different way? Absolutely. And that's honoring someone's choices comes in. But as far as I like to call it, like almost like this proverbial fence that we need to put around our schools, our anything that would try to take away that ability to be a biological woman, a biological man, and what title comes with that. Just because that is the norm does not mean that you get to strip that away.
Absolutely. You mentioned children and school systems for a moment, so I kind of want to switch gears into there. And you have said something before along the terms of don't co-parent with the government. What does that mean, and how can you speak to parents specifically in this term?
I think that what has been great about this time with COVID is there's a lot of parents that have opened their eyes, so to speak, to really in their schools, and why we're seeing parents and kids start to divide, because they're indoctrinating our kids. They're teaching them things like CRT, and that's another divisive angle, and just books that are phallic that are getting their ways into schools. We're dumbing down education. We're teaching to a test score. And not co-parenting with the government.
Oh, hello. So sweet.
Parenting with the government means that we do not lower our standards, take away our morals simply because the school has a program in place. No, this is stand up and say, no, this is my family. I'm going to protect my family values. I believe in friendship. I believe in taking away this wall that is trying to divide us. The school system has been doing it for too long. We see even in simplistic terms what masks are doing and dropping our intellect. They're seeing the IQ points drop up to 20 points. Yeah. That's a whole piece that I think parents are waking up to, is that our schools and our teachers are meant to take them and expand their minds when it comes to math, when it comes to history, real history, and teaching those fundamentals, not for them to teach them what sex they are, what gender they are. Coming out to your class, you've seen these posts going around like crazy, taping to their foreheads, so many different things where they are crossing lines. And so just again, to sum it up, we don't get to allow that to happen and still keep our family unit intact if we're allowing the government to co-parent with us. Or that one of the statements in Nevada was that you lose your right as a parent as soon as you drop your kids off at public school.
Wow, they said that
very aggressively.
Wow. Yeah. And I think it is. I think what you're saying, no matter where you're at, if you're a woman in sports, if you're a parent, if you are just somebody on social media, even, I think it's important to be strong in where you stand and to voice your opinion and to let it be heard and to not allow other people to tell you how you should think, live, breathe, act, move, raise your children. Like, that's the beauty of America. That's why America is so different from every other country, because we get the ability to live, breathe, and move in a way that we see best fit for us and our families, so long as we are not directly harming another individual or family, right? Yeah. And so I think, people being more educated on that and realizing that can really empower them to use that voice and to face that conflict head on even, right? I think some people are so worried and so scared of conflict. They don't want to say anything that's going to upset others. But it's like, you have to ask yourself, what is the cost of what is currently occurring? What is the cost of allowing your children to be indoctrinated with these certain ideas and beliefs and methodologies, right? And that cost at this point is just way too high for you to sit down and be silent. So I think it is important to get involved, to know what your children are being taught and to know what exactly is happening when it comes to the curriculum. Because when they come home and you recognize that, there was even this one story, and I'll just say it very quickly and then we can move on, where this girl came home from school and she asked her mother if her mother was a racist, because her mother believed that Trump was a good president and her mother, was a conservative. And just because of these categories that she fell under, she worriedly, with anxiety inside of her head, right, with these eyes, looks at her own mother and says, "Are you a racist?" And I think that goes back into the curriculum. And you mentioned it just for a second, but CRT. What do you believe, CRT is doing in the schools, and how do you think we should kind of go about handling CRT? Is this something that we accept? Is this something that we further perpetuate, or is this something that needs to be taken out altogether?
That's a loaded question, but it needs to be banned altogether. So, especially in the primary, it is a theory that can, be studied in college, because it is a theory, just like many other theories. But to teach kids this as, in fact, truth, exactly what you just said, it perpetuates more of this divisiveness, and it needs to be gone. Like, there's nothing more. It needs to be completely banned. It needs to be not allowed. And anyone caught teaching it needs to have really strict consequences. Get to pass the buck anymore. You actually see a lot of things happening in public schools where they're passing around their issues. You see a teacher who has an infraction of one sort or another, and then they're passing it to the next school, and kind of kicking the can down the road, so to speak. So, anyone caught, teaching it, it needs to be harsh consequences, just like crime. We need harsh consequences. We can't keep going light, because as you see, this is what's happening, and it's getting worse. And that's not the America that I know, that I love, and we need to protect that.
I speak a lot on victor versus victim mentality, right? The victim mentality is something that I think the CRT perpetuates, especially in different groups of people. So what do you believe when it comes to, victim mentality and CRT, and how that could potentially play a role in how these children grow up and believe about themselves and believe about what is capable for their lives? How do you believe those two are related?
So I think that one of the biggest things is flipping the switch, because victor versus victim, it is perspective. Often I could sit there and I could tell you so many stories about how I could be a victim in life, that so many people wouldn't even blame me, for being, in that mentality. But in reality, you need to flip the script, and we need to start empowering. We need to start telling stories of how incredible each person in each race, like what paved the way for. And that is what a victor mentality is. And that's how we spread that message, is taking, okay, this was the first Black American to fly planes in order to invent, in order to, pave the way. It is the first, Hispanic, the first Spanish, the first Puerto Rican. We elevate each person so that way they can see oh, they're like me. That means I can do that as well. That is how you inspire someone to be beyond that victim mentality. Otherwise, you're teaching that's, this is how you're going to live the rest of your life. Your dad went to jail. Your family is in poverty. This is how you're always going to be. This is how you're going to have to survive. That's wrong. And break the cycle, by stepping up and saying, no, this is what you can be. You can actually have hope. This is the way. They paved the way. Was it easy? No, but they conquered. And it empowers other people to look at them and say, oh, okay, if she can do it, I can do it. And I think that I open that door in some aspects, because so many people, what I get bashed the most for on this journey is like, oh, a pageant queen is running for United States. What does a beauty queen know about anything? Those are titles that I won because I wanted to be part of a group of individuals who were very philanthropic. If you get to know them, doctors, they're lawyers, they're incredible, selfless individuals who just happen to wear ball gowns and be to speak eloquently on stage. It is completely different than what people paint the picture of a pageant queen. And so it is breaking those stigmas in every single arena of what that looks like to be the first person in your family college, the first person to break a cycle, the first person to take a title that was previously, set and has a typical profile, and break that mold.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what you're saying here is so powerful, because I really do believe that words can either bring life to a situation or death to a situation. So we really have to look, especially in the education system, and say, okay, are the words that we are speaking over these children, are they bringing life? Are they bringing expansiveness? Are they bringing abundance? Or are they bringing death? Are they bringing small minds? Are they keeping them in this mental prison? And I think when you look at it like that and ask those types of questions, it becomes really clear what things need to go and what needs to come in, what needs to replace it. So I love that your mind is focused on empowering the individual and giving them a role model, so to speak. And I think that's what we do need, is we need role models in every single area to show people that they can do it. Because if they're able to so clearly see that this person did it, they'll be able to say, okay, I can do this too. And I think there's a lot of power in that. There's a lot of empowerment in empowering that individual. And I feel like that is what America is about as well, right? Is empowering the individual to be good for themselves, to be the best that they can possibly be, to, express every single gift and talent that they were born with, that they were created with. And so I think coming with this like abundance type of mentality and this expansive mentality will help so much in starting with the next generation, which is our school systems.
Absolutely. And something, it was actually a pageant question that I was asked a long time ago, was, what is your wish for everyone in the world? And my response was that everyone would be who God created them to be. Because if God created you to be, then you're not going to want to be anyone else. You're not going to be unsettled in your career. You're not going to be unsettled in life, because He's created every one of us to do amazing, incredible things. And I think that's where we start breaking that piece of, guess what, there are, different social norms that have happened because of repeated behavior. Salatin says, your repetition becomes your reputation. People are allowing that reputation to be a stigma that goes along with so many different things, and we need to break those molds. We don't have to repeat the same things and make it our reputation. Maybe you slipped up. That's okay. Let's not around. Let's fully do, that 180 and say, focus on something else.
I love that so much. An analogy that I kind of give sometimes is I really believe that life and everybody in life, it's like we're in this beautiful symphony, and you need the flutes, you need the violins, you need the clarinets, you need the drums, right? And every single instrument has such a beautiful sound, and not one is better than the other, but they're actually so necessary for the beautiful sound of life to come out. And I think there's so much power in people realizing, oh, I've been trying to be a drum this entire time. I'm actually a flute, and that sound is beautiful and it's perfect and it's exactly what it's meant to be for my position in this symphony, right? And so I think empowering people to realize that is where true change can really come. I want to speak and kind of end this interview on one last thing. You are really big on not just talking about something, but getting into action and executing. So how would you, speak to or inspire those people that are seeing what's going on with the world? They're seeing, this huge attack on family, on gender, on children. They're seeing human trafficking not even be looked at, and they're seeing all these issues, right? They're sharing things on social media, but now they're like, okay, I'm being convicted to actually involve myself. What kind of advice could you give to them to start being involved in any way?
There are a lot of ways people can get involved. And I think that is part of my frustration level in this process, is seeing how many people post a meme or post something and you have so many likes, you have so many comments. And then when you have that call to action, it's crickets, or one says something and they don't follow through. And I think that's where I want to address that like head on. There are so many different things that you can be doing. So if it's an individual who has that inkling or wants to serve in this way, you can actually get involved and you can run for office. That is one piece. The second piece, you can start advocating. You can put groups together to do homeschool groups. You can get those pods together. You can stop allowing those things to happen. Instead of just being frustrated, you can put a group together so that way the burden doesn't fall just on you. If you're a working parent, you take one day, the next parent can take the next day, just making sure that you guys all align, you're teaching a great curriculum, and it's a safe space for kids to learn, to grow, and still have an incredible education. Volunteer. We need so many volunteers. So in this midterm, the way we win is not when one person gets elected. It is when an entire panel gets elected that's standing for one nation under God, that is standing for our freedoms, and they're unabashed in saying, I'm going to fight for these things. It is not about having people like you. It is not about, getting reelected. It is about being a person of action and getting things done. And for me to get it done and then get out, we need people to volunteer. So one way that we stop this massive need for us to outraise each other is by people stepping up and saying, I'm going to volunteer. Volunteering means you can make phone calls from anywhere in the world with this list to get people to pledge to vote in the primaries, to vote for people who are going to be agents of change. Instead of, again, being frustrated, it is super simple. It's picking up on every single day, and we can make those calls. You can knock doors. You can actually go to their pages. You can share their information. You can show up to events. There's so many ways you can get involved that doesn't cost you anything. There you can support, you can be part of the movement, and what happens is that multiplication expands, and no longer do outraise and overspend. We're grassroots at its core, and we can change the way the politics are done by people getting involved, instead of saying that you're frustrated but you're not willing to do anything and you don't show. And an ugly statistic is 13 to 20% of people make the decision in the primary, so only of the Republican Party, only 13 to 20% show up and vote.
Wow.
So, and that is, to me, it is staggering, in saying that historically, if we keep doing that, we're going to keep losing. And everyone's like, I know, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again. But yet they're looking and seeing if you're doing the same model that has been done for years. We don't get to do that. It's time for the Moneyball, process, doing things differently, running numbers differently, and getting people to jump on board, to volunteer, to move as one. And I call that, it's like God's calling his army to rise up. He gave, and it's war. And it says, we are rising. So as a group of people, if we rise, like the Gideon calls people to rise up, the Davids, there's so many, the Nehemiahs, like they collectively came together in a completely different way than had ever been done before. And that's how they won those wars, putting Jehoshaphat, in charge, and having, the worshipers at front. We need to win this fight together by coming at this in a way. And it might look crazy to some, because the typical is hard for some people to, change their mind on. But I can promise that if you get involved right now, if you get involved with these individuals who are standing for everything that God's called them to stand for, we're going to make history in these midterms.
That is beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I agree. I think that how we win is by coming together with community and supporting those people that are fighting the good fight and just filling in wherever it is that you can fill in. So let's say that somebody is listening to this and they are just so aligning with every single thing that you're talking about, and they're actually interested in supporting you directly in your race for U.S. Senate. How can they be a part of that?
There's a couple of different ways to connect with me. So everything is at Sharelle for Senate when it comes to my social media. My name is Sharelle Mendenhall on Facebook, so you can find me there. I personally monitor all of the messaging, so feel free to message me. You can go to my website, Sharelle4Senate.com. There you can sponsor, whether it's us needing yard signs, chip in any way, or if you're just going to volunteer, you can sign up to volunteer there to get our newsletters. But that is how you can get involved. You can message me, and I can promise you I'll put you to work. So don't message me if you put to work.
So, hey, there's your accountability, everybody. If you're listening and you've been saying, yeah, I want to get involved, your accountability is to message her because she will make sure that you actually get involved. Well, Sharelle, I just really appreciate you sharing your time with us and your thoughts and your ideas and your creativity. I think your vision for this country is beautiful, and I think it's grounded in how this country was created in the first place. So I will be praying for you. I'll be praying for your race in the U.S. Senate, and I will be excited to see you win it and take that seat and create some actual change here. So thank you. And for everybody listening, please make sure to check the description box down below. All of her links will be there. So make sure to connect with her, follow her on social, be a part of what she's doing, support the good fight. We need every single person in this fight at every single capacity. So don't think that your addition or your contribution is too small. There is never any contribution that is too small. So see whatever it is currently in your hands and apply that. Be a part of that. Be willing to, put your hands to work and actually get in the fight and not just post about it on social media. So that is my call to action today, guys. Sharelle, thank you again so much for being on today's show.
It was an honor. Thank you, Emily. I appreciate it.
No problem. All right, guys, I will see you in the next one. Do us a favor. If you enjoyed this show, tag us both on your Instagram stories. Make sure to let us know what your favorite part of the show was, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye, guys.